Greetings. Welcome into the Sports Shuffle, fresh off the two-night opening schedule for the NFL. I am Flying Ryan Gokers along with.
Tampa Motormouth Joel Verrill. Hopefully, you don't have too many shares of Jordan Love early.
I don't have any,
Ah,
but that news could have been a lot
one,
worse. That could have been a lot
ouch.
worse.
Yeah,
So we'll get into that. That is the big story. We'll recap both games. We'll get into the Love talk right before we recap the game, though.
definitely a chase concern. I think one might say for Manana.
Yeah, let's do the recaps of Ravens Chiefs. We'll talk Jordan Love. We'll talk the Packers Eagles game because that ended up being both were actually pretty good games. Then we'll talk news and we'll get into our predictions for week number 1, where I am already 0-2.
You're going to do the total recap of the Ravens and Chiefs.
Total.
All
right.
Okay.
Let's go. Chiefs 27, Ravens 20 by the length of a quarter of a big toe. As Isaiah Likely had a great game, but
how many fantasy owners were screaming, yelling at the screen?
We'll get into the Mark Andrews thing here in a minute because there's something there. But Isaiah Likely over 100 yards receiving, a touchdown, 9 receptions, and almost it wouldn't have been the game timing. It wouldn't have been the game timing because we're going to go for 2, but
you already have the NFL refs photoshopped into Chiefs colors and
yada
yada.
Yeah, the refs have been working overtime the first couple of days with these illegal formation calls. Lots of penalties in both games, but
you cringe, anytime when you're listening to a national broadcast and they go, "Well, this is a good block by the Chiefs." They just shook it off, and you're just like,
yeah. Anyways, the Ravens do get 20 points in the loss. Lamar Jackson looked pretty good, running the ball quite a bit, over 100 yards rushing. Derrick Henry,
good game, not a fantastic game.
Fantasy-wise, he at least got you in the end zone. He got you to that 10-point threshold. That's the Derrick Henry experience, though.
Unlike the other running back in the other game, that.
Yeah. Well, pretty much all the running backs. I think Jacobs got you to 10. Barely.
He had a little Barkley action in the second game there.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Jacobs did get over 10, so that helps you at least. But Henry a touchdown on a not great rushing night. Game script, they were behind for a lot of this game, and those games historically have not been great for Derrick Henry. We both expect the Ravens to be a pretty good team. They should be ahead in the future. If you have Derrick Henry, do not panic. Isaiah Pacheco, a solid game. Both of those two players found the end zone. Rashee Rice, wide receiver 1 for the Kansas City Chiefs, was having a fantastic night. And Xavier Worthy with 2 touchdowns on 3 touches. Blazing speed was the name of the game for him. Pat Mahomes, a solid night. Did have an interception.
A Lamborghini. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I saw something about them having one of the fastest wide receiver rooms with Xavier Worthy's 40 time of 4.21 and Rashee Rice's speed of 121 miles an hour. I'm not saying it's a good joke, but it made me laugh.
Hey-o.
But the Chiefs do get the win in the home opener on the banner night, 27-20 over the Ravens. But the big story out of this game, other than the result, Mark Andrews, 2 catches for 14 yards. There were times he was off the field when Isaiah Likely was on the field on the potential game-tying drive. That was, if Isaiah Likely's, I don't know what his shoe size is, but if it's a half size smaller, he's probably in for that touchdown. What is your level of concern with Mark Andrews? You did have the car accident not too far ahead of the season, so maybe he's still a little banged up from that. Maybe there's some...
Just the mere fact that he's playing is pretty amazing.
Yeah, maybe it's just let him get fully healthy. He's got some nicks and bruises, and Isaiah Likely is very talented. I do know I've seen people say, the Chiefs' game plan was to take away Mark Andrews, and there were not many opportunities for him to break away from coverage. I would say if I have Mark Andrews, I'm not panicked yet, but I'm definitely not thrilled to see that the alternative target is the same position group, being Isaiah Likely. Flowers, decent game. Rashad Bateman had a couple big catches set up. The potential game-tying touchdown.
Sort of like a Jonnu Smith level of concern. Like you're going, who got the catch again?
Yeah, I do think I think the Chiefs' game plan though was to say, hey, if you can beat us without going to Mark Andrews, fine. So be it. Did a good job shutting down Henry. Lamar Jackson was that full running game, but definitely
Did
a
did
little concern.
did Harbaugh use up the timeouts just a little bit too quickly, perhaps?
It's the first week of the season. We
Yeah.
saw the Packers. We'll get to that game here shortly.
Oof.
They used their first half timeouts with about 11 minutes left in the second quarter. So there were some timeout issues. They had burned some timeouts at some odd times. But week one, everybody's going to be a little off. But the Chiefs come out on top in a game we both got wrong. No surprise there.
Yeah, because I was drinking the Ravens Kool-Aid, but
Yeah. Well, it was a good game. The Ravens made a heck of a comeback, had the opportunity. If he was in bounds, they were going for two. We might be talking a very different scenario had he had a half shoe size smaller. I mean, that's really the end of that one. All right, before we get into the full recap of Eagles Packers last night, which was a very good game, we do have to talk about Jordan Love. Injured, taken down in an awkward fashion, his ankle pointing the wrong direction with his foot. Being pulled down. There's a slow-mo out there of a pop going to his left knee.
As Tom Grossi was saying, that's not how I wanted you to be like Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. So the good news is there's no tear. There is no long-term issue.
Yeah, because originally
Jordan
a lot
Love.
of people were thinking with all the internet doctors, 6 to 8 weeks, but now with just a sprain.
Yeah, it's going to be Jordan Love's initial timetable for return is the 3 to 6 week range, and there's early optimism he could return sooner than that, pending a second opinion. If you watched, and there's a guy on YouTube, Brian Sutter, who was a doctor. He went through the mechanics of what had happened. He said, hey, there's likely a high ankle sprain here because of the way the ankle was flexed. And where the pop is, it would have been an MCL injury. It does look like that's exactly what it was. Tests on his knee did reveal an MCL sprain. No ACL damage. They actually ruled out an ankle injury already. So he came out of this much, much better than he could have. Because when I saw that pop, I'm like, I've had knee problems. I know when it pops, it's usually significant. But this one, it seems like the Packers' demise that was feared from 3 plays left in that game when he goes down until you got the news that, okay, it's 3 to 6 weeks. The demise of the Packers is not as significant as it was once believed. So good news if you're a Packers.
Definitely hurts them. It's anything but ideal, both for reality and fantasy, but could have been a whole hell of a lot worse.
And for what it's worth, before we get into the recap, the Packers' next 3 games: Colts, Titans, Vikings.
Colts probably the toughest one out of the 3.
I think 2 of those could still be wins.
2 out of 2-1 records, definitely very doable.
And then should he go to the 6-week range, this becomes a little more concerning. It's Rams, Cardinals, and Texans after that. No bye week for the Packers until November.
Aye.
So, I mean, if he misses 6 weeks, the Packers are already at 0-1, 2-2. If they are 3-4, if he's out for 6 weeks, I think Packers fans will be jumping over the freaking moon. Because the Rams, the Texans, and the Colts are solid teams. I think the Cardinals are going to surprise people. But if he can get back in that 3-week range, remember, this was a Friday game as well. So he's got 9 days to recover until the Colts game, 16 to the Vikings, and then 23 to the Rams. So if they're optimistic he can come back early, maybe, or the Vikings, maybe he can get back by that Vikings game, only misses 2, and that would be very good for the Packers. Jordan Love last night, we will go into that game now, 17 to 34 for 260 yards, couple touchdowns and an interception. Couple really bad interceptions, one for each quarterback in this game, just making ill-advised throws. Packers defense got 3 turnovers and kicked field goals pretty much on all of them. Not what you want to do when you're facing a good team like the Eagles. Tush push for the Eagles did not seem as good as it was with Jason Kelsey. So what that means for Jalen Hurts' fantasy value around the goal line, we'll see. Add to that Saquon Barkley had 3 touchdowns, 2 on the ground, over 100 yards rushing, and a 23-yard reception. Maybe Jalen Hurts is going to be a little bit of a fantasy bust if you drafted him where you had to get him in draft.
A uber tier quite as he was last year.
If he is the same level as Kyler Murray, you're going to be upset where you drafted him. That's the big thing in that one. But the Eagles do win 34-29. A lot of field goals in this game, a lot of flags. The Brazil crowd was very good. I think personally,
illegal formation is the new holding.
Yeah, I personally wish that the broadcast would have turned down the in-stadium announcer because you could hear that louder than the commentators. And it's in Portuguese because it's in Brazil, so I don't understand it. So it's like, and then you hear the commentators, and they're just like,
this would be like the loud noises mean.
Yeah. But for the Packers, 0-1, injury to your quarterback. That's not how you hope week 1 goes, but it does seem like they avoided a much worse fate. For the Eagles, 1-0. They beat a team that, Aaron Rodgers got hurt with 3 plays left, or 2 plays after he left. Malik Willis was bad. He's just not going to be the answer. They got to go get like a Ryan Tannehill or something who's on waivers. I thought like maybe trade with Seattle for like Sam Howell, but if you only have 3 weeks, maybe they just let it ride.
Paging Matt Ryan. Would you like to come back to the NFL? Paging Matt Ryan.
For 2-3 weeks, maybe. But the Eagles do get a win over a top flight NFC team. They go to 1-0, and things look like they're going to be pretty good on that offensive side. Whether or not they get the defensive side going, we'll see.
And to clarify my final thought, because that was you had a lot of muddled language in there. Brady cannot criticize the officials, and he is apparently barred from some of the normal pre-production meetings that most reporters and play-by-play people can have access to, but because of his part owner status of the Raiders, he is prohibited from taking part in those activities.
Yeah, one more note from last night's game. Josh Jacobs looked real bad early, but the second half was much, much better. Did average, I think, over 5 yards a carry, right around it. So ended up being a decent night for Josh Jacobs. Got over 100 total yards. Did not find the end zone because the Packers like to throw the ball on 1st and goal from 3 and take a holding penalty.
So with the whole Brady thing, I don't think that's really going to handicap him really as much as I thought, because if you've ever listened to his podcast, which is highly generic on Sirius XM, you probably know about what you're going to get, and we can just see if he can carry over with his, the GOAT status and bring some of that into the broadcast booth. Because once again, you had Tony Romo really wow everybody his first year. Well, we can see if Tom Brady can be even half of that with but it's like 2 completely different personalities, and we'll just have to see.
Yeah. Not having access to the coaches beforehand just means you can't have that. Well, we sat down this week, they told us about this. Like, okay, that's not a big deal.
Yeah, it's like you hear pretty much the exact same thing from everybody pretty much anyway.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. All right, let's go to
news.
Oh, you got something else? Go ahead.
Yeah, speaking of the news, if you're one of the people that you drafted Jamar Chase early, you might want to consider sitting him for week 1. And why would that be, Flyin'?
Well, originally it was a contract dispute, but he's also now listed as questionable for an illness.
NIR reasons.
Rest, illness, so he is still questionable. On top of that, T. Higgins is doubtful with a hamstring injury, so we'll see. It could be Jermaine Burton and Andreas Josivas.
Say that 3 times real fast. Do you want to pick the New England Patriots in Survivor? Holy shinoli.
Well, we'll get to our picks here in a little bit, but definitely without those 2 makes it harder. I expect a lot of Zach Moss and Chase Brown. in that game. Let's go through some other news. DeAndre Hopkins is set to play. He was questionable with a knee injury, so he should be going against the Chicago Bears.
The Bucks, I think, have now two, I believe, linemen who might be injured. So we'll have to see how much of an effect that has with the Bucks Commanders matchup.
Yep. 49ers running back Christian McCaffrey, calf Achilles, is questionable for Monday night's game with the Jets.
Are you taking the Jets Kool-Aid?
No, the Jets are going to screw up. That's what they do.
The Jets are going to Jets are jetting.
Jets are going to jet. Cincinnati has elevated wide receiver Kendrick Pryor.
We have no idea who that is.
Now I want to note Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. They elevated one receiver. Sometimes you have to look at the actions of the team. They only elevated one receiver, with those two being questionable and one being doubtful. Seems to me like Cincinnati, through their actions, is planning on having at least one of those two tomorrow. As you had mentioned, actually, defensive lineman for the Bucs, Kalijah Kancey, will miss Sunday's opener against Washington. For the Chargers, wide receiver DJ Chark going to the IR. Not probably fantasy relevant there.
Yep.
Mike Williams is good to go for the Jets, but he will be on a pitch count. Allen's already expected to have a prominent role. Let's see.
Fastballs or screwballs?
CD Lamb moved from the reserve list to the active roster as expected, but
that's because he's got the money.
Yep. Russell Wilson, calf injury, is making the trip to Atlanta, is officially questionable.
Oh boy. Let's ride.
Yeah. He'll probably still try and do high knees in the airplane.
Okay, Justin, it's all you, dude.
Let's see. Anything else major from the last day or two? Nope. I think that's pretty much it. Week 1, you don't expect to see a lot of problems. Brock Bowers looks like he's going to play for the Raiders. Let's hit this one. Players ruled out that are nobody fantasy relevant. Josh Downs for the Colts is 1. Wide receiver 3. Roman Wilson, wide receiver 3 for the Steelers. Ian Thomas out for the season, I believe, for the Panthers. Tight end. Tommy Tremble also for the Panthers, a tight end, but you're not going there. And we already mentioned DJ Chark. So, nobody, as you would expect in week 1, nobody really major is projected to be out. So, let's dive into the picks because, well, it's happening again where I pick real bad to start the year. And Joel is ahead of me already. Joel, 1-1 picking Philadelphia and Baltimore. I am 0-2 picking Green Bay and Baltimore this week. And looking at my picks, I'm taking many more risks. But let's start with the first game. We just mentioned Russell Wilson being questionable. We don't know if it's going to be Wilson. We don't know if it's going to be Fields. We don't know if it's going to be like a mix of both because of the injury or ineffectiveness. Pittsburgh going to Atlanta. The return of Arthur Smith to Atlanta happens right away. For the Steelers, you're probably going to have to consider Najee Harris and then George Pickens. That's about it. For Atlanta, Bijan, Pitts, and Drake London. And in deeper leagues, Kirk Cousins should probably be in your lineup. Atlanta is the splashy vibe pick to really pop off this season. Pittsburgh has the juju, the magic of Mike Tomlin, always finds a way to get to above 500, or at least 500, which is not an option anymore. So this should be a very interesting game, especially with what we don't know with Pittsburgh's quarterback situation. Joel, who do you got?
Yeah, this one, I think it's definitely you can look for a toss-up. I mean, right now it's, when you've got the -2, that's barely favorites for the Atlanta Falcons at home. But, QBC play in the preseason was horrific. And Pittsburgh has RB injuries to start the season. That's never good. You also have linemen injured on Pittsburgh as well. And while Atlanta's defense is not exactly what you would call great, they have made some upgrades in the offseason. Yeah, not as much in the draft. Yeah, we know what they did in the draft, but I I just think Pittsburgh's not at home. I think just the Tomlin juju, as you pointed out, I think it's going to start to kind of run out on empty. And Atlanta, it's early season. They're starting off pretty healthy already, unlike Pittsburgh. I've got to go with a healthier team, and I'm picking the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, I'm taking Atlanta as well in this one. I do think they have the better offensive weapons, and that is not even mentioning anything about the Pittsburgh's quarterback situation. I don't think the best way to go into this first game of the season is to not know who your starting quarterback is going to be 24 hours out because of injury. Maybe they know in that room, but if it's not Russell Wilson beginning the snaps, how much exposure has Justin Fields gotten to this first team offense since that decision's been made? I'm not 100% sure. I just think Atlanta's got too many horses. And frankly, I think that team wants to beat Arthur Smith really, really badly. So I think they're going to come out motivated and try and put their stamp on the game and get the win here. Next up, Arizona going to Buffalo to face the Bills. The Bills, to me, are a very unknown team on both sides of the ball to start the season. Josh Allen's going to be in your lineup, but outside of that, Dalton Kincaid is about the only other option in the passing game you can consider if you are in a deep league. Maybe a Coleman, maybe a Shakir, maybe a Curtis Samuel, but those seem to be more dart throwy type of picks. And, of course, James Cook out of the backfield. For the Cardinals, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be in your lineup. Trey McBride, James Conner, and Kyler Murray all should be in your lineup and playing in this game. Based on that, it seems like we're hoping for better things out of the Arizona offense than Buffalo. Buffalo's had a lot of turnover on defense. Arizona had one of the worst defenses in the league last year. So, Joel, who do you got?
Yeah, this one is just kind of one of those tough ones to look at because it's a potential, and I say potential look ahead game for Buffalo because week 2, yeah, TNF at Miami. You don't think Buffalo's thinking about that at all, do you? Nah.
Probably not.
Nah, not at all. But yeah, it's just, the Cardinals have an ability to come back, but you just look at and I know you have a Bills with the big question of that locker room and who does Josh Allen have to throw to, but just until the Cardinals they can show me that they are a better team than they were last season. I think the onus is on the Cardinals, and I'm going to go with the home team, and I'm picking Buffalo. I don't have a whole lot of confidence in picking the Bills, but they just seem to be the better of the two teams once again until the Cardinals prove me wrong by winning.
Yeah, I'm in the Josh Allen jersey, and I'm taking the Cardinals. I've said this a couple times already. I think the Bills start off very slowly this year, trying to figure out who is going to contribute on offense. I think the Cardinals will really focus in on making sure Kincaid can't go crazy in the passing game and shutting down James Cook. I do think this offense, it was a top 10 unit when Kyler Murray came back. He is more healthy now than he was then. The ACLs had more time to heal. His running game will be more able to be used than it was at the end of last season when he came back. And Buffalo's defense did lose a lot of pieces, especially in that secondary. Are they going to be on the same page? I'm not 100% sure. I think Arizona is one of those up-and-coming teams that I think will surprise this year. And as you said, it could be a look-ahead game to a big divisional matchup against arguably your biggest competition for the division crown. And I think Arizona is a team that's easy to underestimate because of what they were last year. And I think they could get surprised by them and upset. So I'm going to take Arizona. And the Bills' hatred runs pure, but I really don't think it's just me being biased in this one. Next up, Tennessee at Chicago for the Titans. There may not be anybody on that team you have to start. Calvin Ridley's in consideration. Pollard, Tajay Spears in consideration. More likely than not in the flex position for Chicago. I could make the argument that you don't know who you need to start, but DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, Roma Dunze, probably by where you draft them, have to be started for this week.
Mhm.
Cole Kmet, a deeper league tight end, and DeAndre Swift is at least in flex consideration, if not better. It just depends on how you built your team. Chicago has a lot of optimism, a lot of buzz, a lot of hype. Tennessee's kind of just forgotten and left for dead. Oh, Derrick Henry left. You lost your head coach in the offseason. Any shot of Tennessee surprising the most hyped team in the league?
Yeah, I think you tend to look at the Bears and you're trying to make up your mind. You're going, okay, how do they win? And then you really look at the Titans, and with the Titans, it's a case of what have they lost? And they lost a really, really big, huge piece with losing Derrick Henry going to the Ravens. And I don't think there's a whole lot that can replace him. I know that they absolutely paid a absolutely ridiculous amount for Ridley, like beyond ridiculous, but I don't think that can replace the workhorse that was Derrick Henry. So while it's not a case of I have so much faith in Caleb Williams and I have a lot of faith in the Bears, but it's a case of Tennessee just really just doesn't impress me with what they have. Once again, it's one of these teams that they're going to have to, like the Cardinals, okay, show me that you're ready to step up and show me that you can win. And until they do that, I'm going to kind of have to hold my nose just a little bit. And it's hard me seeing them beat the Bears. Yes, I know the Bears at Soldier Field.
This was probably the toughest game for me to pick all week, and I am taking Tennessee. I do know losing Derrick Henry is a big deal, but when you have Derrick Henry, he is the focal point of both your offense and the opponent's defense. I do think getting Calvin Ridley, you still have DeAndre Hopkins, Chig Okonkwo could factor into this passing game a little bit more. Tajay Spears had some pop last year, and let's not forget that Tony Pollard was dealing with an ankle injury most of last season and was still a pretty good running back, all things considered. Got better as the season went on as he started to get a little more healthy. So I think Tennessee's offense is going to be better than we expect. We'll see if Mayo Man can take the next step. Will Levis does need to step up his game, but you added Calvin Ridley for a reason. This defense, this offensive line, they've been reworked. We'll see what happens, but I just think a rookie quarterback and first overall picks, I think 18-1 in the last 19 instances where they got the start. So it doesn't bode well historically for Chicago. And frankly, I don't necessarily believe in Caleb Williams. Maybe I need to see it before I do. But I think this is going to be an ugly game, and I think Tennessee gets the job done. Next up, a game you might not have a fantasy asset starting at this point.
Ouch.
Well, if Chase and Higgins miss, Chase is at least questionable. And if he plays, it's going to be a snap count. How much you trust that, I'm not sure. Zach Moss, you probably didn't draft him to be a starter at running back position. If you did draft him as your running back 2, okay, you're going to play him. This isn't the worst matchup. Ramondre Stevenson for the Patriots is the only viable option. Maybe Hunter Henry on a dart throw at tight end. Joe Burrow without his top 2 receivers, I don't know if that's even a place you want to go. If you can go pick up someone like a Jared Goff, who's very good in the dome, you can pick up a Baker Mayfield, or maybe a Jaden Daniels is still sitting on waivers. So you have one of those leagues that just doesn't draft multiple quarterbacks. They both have pretty good matchups. Derek Carr against Carolina could be interesting. There's still some options out there. Trevor Lawrence against Miami could be a good one.
Minnesota against Miami. Giants.
Yeah, Minnesota against the Giants. I don't think you want Darnold. I don't think you trust I don't think you trust Daniel Jones there either. But I think there's going to be options on waivers if you're just like, man, Burrow's losing a lot this week. Maybe, just maybe, Patriots should have a good defense. We'll see. But this should be a good week for defenses for fantasy reasons for both of these teams. So, Joel, Cincinnati is a much better team when fully healthy.
Yes, but the battle station is not fully operational this week. So, yeah, question of Higgins. Big
doubtful for Higgins and big question for Chase.
I mean, so you're looking at the two potential components of that super laser that won't even be able to be potentially fired this week. But all yet the case. We look and we remember the New England Patriots and Bill Belichick's final year before he graduated and temporarily went to the booth. I saw he's joining the 33rd team on social media. Talk of being, I think, with the Manning cast. So he's temporarily going to be broadcasting, and that was a pretty painful year. That was a very painful year. We remember exactly how bad those Patriots are. And granted, they have a brand new rookie quarterback, have a brand new rookie head coach. But even with the two main weapons being taken off the Bengals, to talk about ugly games, I think this game is going to be as ugly as the previous game we mentioned. Going to be one of those you sort of like, okay, how bad are things going? Let's check in on this one. Oh boy, let's go and cringe to Cincinnati. But I still think, as a whole, now I wouldn't be picking Cincinnati ATS. But as a whole basic unit, it was, I think, minus 8.5 points. I know if it's
That's
gone up.
gone up. I
So
think I got it at about 7.5.
so not ATS, but I'm still picking Cincinnati because I think, by and large, as a whole, as a unit, that's still the better team than we remember how utterly pathetic the Patriots were last year. So going Cincy. Yeah, holding my nose yet again, but going Cincy.
Yeah, just to go over this real quick. Without Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, the receiving core will be rookie Jermaine Burton, who is expected to have basically a redshirt year. Andre Yoshivas, Charlie Jones, and Trenton Irwin. So a bunch of names most people don't know.
We insert the Homer Simpson. We have no idea who that is. Quote.
At tight end, though, Mike Gesicki, Drew Sample, and Tanner Hudson all have had impacts in the NFL. So probably going to be a very wide or tight end heavy game. Zach Moss, Chase Brown, again, I think they're going to be a focal point for this one. If we look at the Patriots real quick, let me go find Ramondre. Did you hear Simba screaming in the background because he's a crazy cat? Yep, that's him. He's still around.
He wants some attention, right, Mia?
Yeah. Without injuries for the Patriots, receiving staff is Demario Douglas, Jalen Polk, Tyquan Thornton, Javon Baker, KJ Osborne, Keyshawn Butte. I mean, I still think I take the receiving core for the Bengals. Even without those two, I definitely trust Joe Burrow more than I trust Jacoby Brissett. Ramondre Stevenson's going to be the focal point of this defense. I think this is an extremely low-scoring game, but I just don't see the Patriots offense doing anything. It could be a 27-6 Bengals win, and they'll have 2 defensive touchdowns or something. It's kind of how I see this game going. But I still think Cincinnati's the better team. I still think they're going to win, and thank God for Cincinnati's sake that they're not playing a much better team in week number 1. They're playing arguably the worst team in the NFL. Next up, divisional matchups, Houston at Indianapolis. Indianapolis, you're finally going to see Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson on the field at the same time. We'll see how that works. Michael Pittman also will be in your lineups. Beyond that, probably not much here for Houston. Pretty much if it's in their starting lineup, you can start it between Stroud, between Dell, Nico Collins, Joe Mixon, Stephon Diggs, even Dalton Schultz. All are at least viable options in this one. Houston, young team, on the up and up. Indianapolis, we don't know quite what we have in Anthony Richardson yet. So, Joel, who do you got?
Yeah, with this one, it's a case of two teams trying to figure out, and I think you have the most firepower with the Houston Texans, especially with the add-on of Diggs to the team, and they can just figure out what their identity is. I just had to have a little bit more confidence in them than I do with the Colts, as the Colts have shown explosive flashes and offensive brilliance, but then they also tend to have times where they remind you that they're the Colts. So I believe in Houston and Stroud and his plethora of weapons more than I do Richardson. And you'll just have to show me if they've got what it takes. I'm going the Texans.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Texans too. On top of having the better options in the wide receiving game, I think they have the better defense as well. We don't know we have an Anthony Richardson. I think this offense is going to take some time to get back going. You got to think they're going to try and protect him a little bit more than they did last year. You have Jonathan Taylor. I expect him to get a heavy workload in this game. Probably a closer game than a lot of people would think. Might be one of the better games of the week, but I'm going to take Houston as well. Just a little too much talent, or a little too much more talent on both sides of the ball than Indianapolis has. Next up, a battle in the Sunshine State. It's Jacksonville going to Miami to face the Dolphins. For the Jaguars, ETN is going to be in your lineup. Outside of that, Trevor Lawrence is a consideration if you're scared of Burrow or something. Ingram is a tight end option, and then you have rookie Brian Thomas Jr. You have Gabe Davis, who are listed as the starters. Christian Kirk is listed as the wide receiver 3. I believe of those 3, if you're going to start somebody, it's Brian Thomas Jr. He's got a ton of hype. His camp has been very, very good, but it's going to take some time for them all to mesh. And I would say Christian Kirk and Gabe Davis are at best average wide receivers. For the Dolphins, Tua is definitely a startable option this week. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Raheem Mostert, and Devon Achane in your lineup as well. Dolphins started the season very hot last year. They do better against lesser teams, and I do believe if you look at the talent, Jacksonville is not as good as Miami on paper, but we do know the Dolphins struggled against good teams, and the Jags are still going to be a good team, even if the talent does not say they're as good as Miami. So, Joel, who do you got?
Yeah, this one you tend to look at Jacksonville, and you're hoping that they can step back up to at least the first half. You don't even want to talk about the second half. That was fairly putrid. And Miami just had, a bit of a bad luck. All of a sudden, they brought in Shaq Barrett, of course, his horrible, very tragic offseason, and he just retired. So you've got a cluster bunch of injuries from the defense, from the offense, from the defense, from the Dolphins. But when you're looking at the Dolphins, you're really not thinking about the defense all that much. You're thinking about the offense. And when you look at both teams, I know Jacksonville has definitely had their flashes, and you're talking dangerous offense, and I know you always have Miami in a question of going against those good teams, and can they finally step up? But let me tell you, with Mike Macdonald starting off early season, weeks 1 and 4, he's 3-0 straight up. Got to go with the team from South Beach in Miami.
Yeah, it's Mike McDaniel. Mike McDonald, I think, is the head coach of the Seahawks. Very confusing. Very confusing. Yeah, that's why I think on the fantasy football, they just call both of them Ronald McDonald now, just because it's hard to remember Mike McDonald and Mike McDaniel. It's unfortunate that you have 2 head coaches for the same pretty much name. For me, the Dolphins are the better team in this one. And don't forget, they have one of the weirdest and most dominant home field advantages in the NFL with the shading from the stadium, shading their sideline and roasting the opponents. And yes, Jacksonville is from Florida, but I'm going to say this. If you're sitting in the sideline in the shade and it's about 85 degrees, you have those big wind tunnel fans that they have, you're going to be okay. If you're on the opponent's sideline in 115-degree heat index, humidity really going crazy, you're going to feel it by the end of the day. And Miami being a track team, a team that's just going to run and wear you out anyways, adding that extra heat on that other sideline, I think is going to end up being just a little too much for that defense to hold up to. I don't think Jacksonville's offense is going to be able to keep up with Miami's. I'm going to take Miami in a fairly high-scoring game. This might be the highest-scoring game of the week. I think the Dolphins have the chance to be at least the highest-scoring team of the week, if not the combined score. Next up, oh boy, NFC South battle between 2 teams nobody has optimism about. The Carolina Panthers, I believe I saw, were the 4th least optimistic lineup fan base in the NFL. New Orleans was dead last. So nobody's optimistic about these games. 4 fantasy options. Chuba Hubbard, you probably didn't have to draft him to be a starter, but he is going to be a good option in this game because he's going to be the number 1. Maybe Deontay Johnson. There's just not much. If you're desperate, if you're in a dynasty league, that's a deep league, maybe an Adam Thielen. but it's just not a great situation for Carolina. You want to see, outside of Hubbard, you want to see some people who actually start to perform. For New Orleans, it's going to be Kamara and it's going to be Chris Olave. You might get desperate with the Taysom Hill at tight end. You might get froggy with Shaheed as a wide receiver flex for a deeper league. But this is a game that I would think those defenses, again, have the opportunity to shine. This should be a lower scoring game this week, kind of the opposite of the game we just talked about. Joel, the Panthers had the worst record in football last year. The Saints, well, they were the Saints. It seemed like Derek Carr couldn't get on the same page. Dennis Allen seems to be the worst head coach in football, insulting his players for being injured. I think the doom and gloom around the Saints will stay until he is gone, and I think that happens very early in the season. But Joel, does it start with a win or a loss for Dennis Allen this week with New Orleans?
Well, Dennis Allen is one of the worst ATS coaches. Derek Carr is one of the worst quarterbacks in the entire league. Just, I mean, if you had any shares of him last year and you were just going, why did I pick him? But it's not a case of the fact that I have so much faith in the Saints just because Allen's one of the first coaches everyone thinks is going to be fired and pretty darn early. And when you have that tandem, you don't have a lot of confidence in the head coach, and you have next to no confidence at all in the quarterback. And you're talking to Olave, Kamara, literally it has to carry the entire offense. It's not a question of I have faith in the Saints. It's a question of, once again, like the Cardinals, like the Titans, you guys have to show me that you're ready to make for that next level. I know you've had all talk, of course, new coach Canales over from the Bucks for the Panthers. It's a new era in Carolina. Hopefully we will not have owners throw drinks into the crowds.
Let him get a full season to do what he's supposed to do, at least. The
So
head coach.
yeah, because you had the whole mess last year.
Frank Reich got fired midseason, and the year before it was
Baker Mayfield was traded away. I mean, it's called who the hell is the quarterback? Who the bleep is the head coach? What's going on here? It's just absolute complete, a literal football version of who's on first for the crazy Panthers, and they need some serious stability. And so once they can get under their belt and figure out who they are, then I think I'll pick them. But until that happens, another hold my nose pick, and I'm picking the Saints.
I was very tempted to pick Carolina, but I agree with you. I think it's going to take a little time. Dave Canales did revitalize Geno Smith. He did revitalize Baker Mayfield last year in Tampa, so it's possible he can revitalize Bryce Young. But I just think the Saints' defense is too strong. I do think they have at least Kamara. They have Olave. One of those guys has to get going. But to explain my confidence in Derek Carr, I have a dynasty league where I traded and got Josh Allen at some point in the offseason. When I inherited this team a couple years ago, I had Deshaun Watson on it, which is not great. And then I drafted J.J. McCarthy, and I said, hey, I'm going to go out and get a quarterback 4. And I went and got Derek Carr. I'm like, hey, if I ever have an instance where, I don't know, one of my quarterbacks gets injured, have to worry about the bye week, my other quarterbacks got a dead arm, at least I got a bailout option. As soon as McCarthy got hurt, I was like, oh, no, he cannot be my number 3 quarterback. In a single quarterback league, I didn't think Derek Carr was a valid enough quarterback number 3 on my team. Ended up making a trade to get Deshaun Watson and J.J. McCarthy off of the roster to a rebuilding team and getting Bo Nix and Matthew Stafford in return. So now Derek Carr is rightfully back as the number 4 quarterback on my roster, just in case all hell breaks loose. But I didn't want him enough. And I think that says everything you need to know about how the confidence in the New Orleans Saints offense really looks. But at this point, you got to go with the Saints. Next up, Minnesota and the New York Giants. It's not great for either one of these teams. The Giants, Daniel Jones coming back off the ACL, didn't look great in the preseason, had some flashes, not so much at other times. Malik Neighbors, you're going to play him if you draft him. It could be a bumpy ride. And Devin Singletary is at least an option. He's the starting running back for the Giants. From Minnesota, Justin Jefferson, you draft him, you have to play him. Aaron Jones is the only other one you're really going to play as well. Addison could be a flex consideration, but down the line. These are two bad offenses, Sam Darnold versus Daniel Jones. Yeah, it's a stinker. This is probably the worst game of the week. So Joe, who do you got?
Oh boy, let me see. I'm looking. Just
Take the unders is all I can say on this game.
take the way. Can you do any more ways? Way unders. Okay, so yeah, it's a sinker, and no, you can't really trust Darnold. Can you trust Dable? I mean, Dable 22-13-1 ATS with the Giants. 63 is the highest among head coaches last 20 years with a minimum of 10 games. Dable straight up 16 of 19. Yeah, I'm picking the Vikings.
I'm taking the Giants. I don't really like either one of these teams, but I do think Sam Darnold coming into the starting role by injury doesn't have the same amount of time. I think the Giants defense is maybe a touch better than Minnesota. I think Malik Neighbors is going to give them a passing threat. I don't know, man. This is just going to be a turd of a game, and I got to pick somebody. I'm going to take the Giants, and Joel's going to be on Minnesota, and one of us is going to be right, and one of us is going to be wrong, and I don't think either of us really care at that point. Next up, Las Vegas at the Los Angeles Chargers. The Raiders. Gardner Minshew, now the quarterback. Javonte Adams going to be in your lineup. Brock Bowers is at least in consideration at tight end. And I think Zamir White's at least in flexible consideration at the running back position. And if you're in a very deep league, maybe Jacoby Myers as well. For the Chargers, oh boy, who do you? I don't think there's anybody you're starting. Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins. Keep in mind with the running back at flex consideration, Lad McConkey and Josh Palmer, maybe Quentin Johnson. I don't think any of those have to be in your lineup. Shows the weapons on the offensive side of the ball. So for the Chargers, not a great fantasy option. Justin Herbert, maybe deep leagues. I don't know. Two teams from the AFC West, two teams with not a lot of. I mean, there's a lot of buzz around the Chargers, but I don't know if it's hope for this season. Joe, who do you got?
Yeah, unless Harbaugh can steal some signs from the Raiders. Yeah. Just another one of these type of games. But I don't know. Austin Eckler is now on the Commanders. Who does Herbert really have to throw to? We saw what Easton Stick looked like last year, which was not anything at all resembling an NFL quarterback, as they all just gave up on Staley. They're like, yeah, let's get this guy fired. So I'm telling you, it's like, they've had, I know there's all a buzz about Harbaugh, but he's a coach. He has to get his culture installed into the team. He's got to get things built up. It's the first game of his first year, and you got to ask, how long is he going to be there? So, and then you look on the other sideline, Pierce, elevated, kept. I think you tend to have a more secure coaching as far as both teams go for Vegas. And I'm going the Raiders solely on that basis.
I am taking the Raiders as well. I do think it's going to take some time for this offense to figure out what they're doing. And I just have a little more confidence in what I saw with the Raiders defense last year. They were much better once Pierce became the head coach. I think that defense is going to continue to be fairly dominant. And I just think that the Chargers are not going to be a good team. I mean, they haven't been a very good team in general. not winning games, and now you've lost a lot of your offensive talent. So I do think they're going to take a little bit of a step back, and the Raiders defense can shut down the running game, and that's going to be a big factor in this one. Don't forget the Raiders absolutely blitzed the Chargers 63-10, I think it was. 63-17 at one point. So, yeah. All right, next up, Denver at Seattle. The Russell Wilson Bowl that is no longer featuring Russell Wilson. For Denver, again, another game you might not have to start anybody from the Broncos. Javonte Williams in consideration, Sutton in consideration, deep leagues. Bo Nix could be there as well. Greg Dulcich at tight end could be a dart throw, but nobody that in my mind is a must start unless your roster construction just has Javonte Williams as your top two running backs. For Seattle, going to be DK Metcalf. Tyler Lockett is questionable. You're going to play Ken Walker. Probably end the list there. Denver's defense, Seattle's defenses are both in consideration. A rookie quarterback in his first start, good place to target for a defense. And then Seattle, it's still Geno Smith. It's still not the most stellar offense. We'll see how it is with the new offense because it's a new head coach bringing the Washington Huskies style of offense. So we'll see. This could be another one where the defense is the star of the game. Joel, who do you got in this one?
Yeah, this one is just you look at the offense. I mean, I know Denver did a little bit of fine tuning, but Seattle has the most dangerous offense, and I know you have some question if Geno Smith has a little bit of regression or if he can keep the performance from last year. And just looking at these units, Seattle's got the better offense. They have the better pieces, JSN, so forth and so forth, DK. I've got to go with the better offense. I'm picking Seattle. Easy.
I am also taking Seattle, but I do see the path for Denver to win this one. Bo Nix looked great in the preseason. The Denver defense, after they got stomped by Miami and gave up 70 points, they ended up being a top about 18 defense. And if you take away that 70-point massacre, they were starting to get close to the top 10 in a lot of factors. So I think this defense is going to be better. Year 2 under Sean Payton, this team's going to be more in the image he wants them to be in, whether it's good or bad. But I don't think it's going to pan out to be a win. It's going to take some time for Bo Nix to get into the full roster, into the full game flow of the NFL. And I think Seattle a little more established. I think you can still rely on Ken Walker and DK Metcalf, and whether it's Lockett or JSN, another name to keep in mind. I think the offense is just a little bit better. I think the defense will hold up well enough. For what it's worth, I think I have Seattle's defense playing in a league for me, so I am also taking Seattle in what I think last time these two teams, it was a 17-16 game. I could see it being a very similar situation next time they play on Sunday. All right, arguably the best game of the week that was not an island game. Dallas at Cleveland. Both teams were playoff teams. Both teams got embarrassed by young upstart teams in the first round of the playoffs. Dallas got beat by Green Bay. Cleveland got beat by Houston, both in kind of humiliating fashion. Deshaun Watson coming back for the Browns. I don't know how you feel about that. I think Amari Cooper is still definitely in your lineup. He was very, very safe with Amari Cooper, and he was good without him. David Njoku, a little less significant and a little less secure, but if you draft him, he's probably going to be your tight end of choice. And then Jerome Ford is a good dart throw. Dallas has a good defense, but later in drafts, you could get him if you went 0 RB. Jerome Ford is an absolute steal. He's going to be the starter as long as Nick Chubb is out and he stays healthy, and Nick Chubb's going to miss at least the first 4 weeks, probably a little bit longer than that. And then both these defenses are very, very good, so they can be in consideration. But the Dallas offense is very, very explosive. CeeDee Lamb, obviously going to be in your lineup. I think Jake Ferguson at tight end is definitely in consideration. And Dak Prescott in most leagues, he was a league winner last year, so he should be. But in most leagues, Dak Prescott's going to need to be a starter. We'll see about Brandon Cooks. He's the wide receiver 2 for the Cowboys. I don't think he's in consideration for this game. And then we got to see what that backfield split is going to be, whether it's going to be Zeke, whether it's going to be Rico Dowdle, maybe Dalvin Cook, who's on the practice squad right now, comes up and it's a 3-man committee. I think Dowdle has the inside track, but I don't think you have to start Rico Dowdle unless you really went 0 RB and just Jerome Ford, Rico Dowdle, backup is what you have as your option. So This should be a very interesting game. Two very, very good defenses, two competent enough offenses. I think Dallas, the better offense here. I think Cleveland, though, is a little bit better on defense. So who do you got?
Because the big time question is once again Deshaun Watson, if he can get over whatever that was last year and a little bit less off the field shenanigans, and see if that can keep his brain more on football than other things. But both of the offenses, I think Dallas is the better of the two. I know that they're going to Cleveland, but yeah, Dallas can't carry themselves, especially when it's not late in the season, when all of a sudden they turn into a pumpkin. This is the first game, so they have many, many, many more weeks before it's time to turn into a pumpkin. So because of that, Prescott's better of the two quarterbacks. CeeDee Lamb got his money, so he's going to be ready to put on a clinic against the Browns defense. So pity them greatly, and I think Dallas wins maybe closer than we think, because once again, you said the Browns have a pretty good, decent D, but Dallas is the better offense of the two. I'm going Cowboys.
This is worth mentioning, just for what it's worth. Since 2020, Deshaun Watson has played in 12 games at the quarterback position, one of which he left, I think two of which he left early with injury. So in 4 years, he's played 12 games at quarterback. I think there's going to be some inconsistency. There's going to be some rust. And I think it's going to be a rough start to the season for the Browns, because if he stays healthy, it's going to take him some time to get back into the flow. You started seeing him get back into that at the end of the 2022 season. Of course, he came back from the 11-game suspension. Was not a quarterback one until the last 2 weeks of the season, where he was a quarterback 8, quarterback 6. Last season started as quarterback 5, got a little banged up in week 2, was a quarterback 10, then injured, quarterback 8, and out. So I think it's going to be inconsistent. And when you face a team like Dallas, it does have a good defense. I think it's just going to be too much. And CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott are going to produce. I think Ferguson and Cooks will help that passing game. And one of those running backs, if they're competent, it should be a fairly easy win for Dallas, even though it's on the road. I'm going to take Dallas as well. Next up, your Buccaneers host the Washington Commanders. Jaden Daniels, the savior of the franchise, possibly for Washington, the second time they've traded up to get a running quarterback. Or no, they didn't have to trade up this time. Running quarterback in the second overall pick. And the first one worked out pretty well for almost a full season until Robert Griffin III blew his knee. And then he was never the same again. With that being said, Tampa had one of the worst passing defenses. So I think Jaden Daniels is absolutely in consideration to play in deeper leagues. He's a must start. I mean, our 16-teamer, if he's not playing, one, that means someone drafted stupidly, because there's not 16 quarterbacks that are better for fantasy, in my opinion, than Jaden Daniels, and I'd rather take the chance. For Washington as well, Terry McLaurin's going to be in your lineup. Zach Ertz is probably going to be impactful. Probably not somebody you're going to want to start, but keep it in mind. I don't think Luke McCaffrey gets on the field quite yet, but he's interesting as well. And then in the backfield, Eckler and Brian Robinson. We don't know what that split's going to be. I would favor Brian Robinson, but both are at least options. For Tampa, Rachaad White, Mike Evans, definitely in your lineup. Godwin, probably a wide receiver 2 to a flex option in this case. And Baker, definitely, again, quarterbacks against the Washington defense look like they're going to have a good time. So Baker could be a good option here as well. This could be either a very ugly game where both offenses find a way to struggle, or a very high scoring game where both defenses really struggle. Tampa, they've won the division 2 years in a row. They have actual competition in Atlanta, so dropping a game to Washington, not the best way to start. But Washington, again, they're turning the corner on the Dan Snyder era. They're turning the corner, and now they got Jaden Daniels to start that era. Joel, who do you got?
This is definitely going to be a true test of every sense of the word for Tampa. Coming out of the box, division crown defense. They have their eyes on that again, I'm sure, this year. But the question is, this is going to be their very first test, because if if they want to get back to at least the crown, because all of a sudden, once again, you have Atlanta definite contenders that it's going to be a battle twice a year. New Orleans definitely has fallen on hard times, but still a battle every time those two teams hook up. And you can't even look past the Panthers, who even in their lowly state last year ended up just Tampa had that horrific. You barely could put up 3 field goals against them, and you're just going, "What the bleep is going on here, Bucks?" So, yeah, if the Bucks want to get back to be on top of the division, it starts here. It starts in week 1, and show me what you've got, Tampa. Can Baker weather the storm without Canales now in Carolina? How much of an effect is that going to be? How much of an effect? Shaq Barrett not on the team anymore. So if Tampa's divisional defense begins here, they've got to show that they want it, because I'll tell you, if they cannot beat the Washington Commanders at home in week 1, it's going to be a long season, folks. Picking the Bucks.
Yeah, Washington's defense should be one of the worst in football. I think if the Bucks don't come out and score points, you are going to be very concerned with the loss of Dave Canales here. I'm taking the Bucks. I do think Washington is going to surprise this week. I think they're going to play very, very well. I think this might be an uncomfortably close game for the Bucks, but I think the offense is just going to be too much for that defense to stop and just score enough for the kind of like last night where it's back and forth with the Eagles and Packers. I think it's going to be kind of similar where the team that scores last wins, and I think that'll be the Bucks. Next up, Sunday Night Football, the return of Matthew Stafford to Detroit, part number 2. Of course, this was this was a wild card matchup last year where the Rams lost to Detroit. But going back, Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, Cooper Kupp, all going to be in your lineup. Matthew Stafford in consideration again. If you have Joe Burrow and you're not happy with both of the wide receivers being out, Goff and Stafford are both good options in this game. You're probably not going too much farther than those 4 guys, though. For Detroit, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Gibbs, Montgomery, Sam Laporta, definitely all in your lineup. Montgomery maybe a little bit more in that flex, not so sure starter position. And then Jared Goff, I think this is going to be a pretty good game for him. He plays well at home. He plays well in domes. He has doing both of those this week.
You have to feel for managers that they're going, okay, Jordan Love is out for a while, and my other one is Joe Burrow.
Well, the good news is if you played Jordan Love last night, you don't have to make that decision this week. If not, well, that's too bad. Detroit was a half away from the Super Bowl last year. You got to think there's a bitter taste in their mouth, but the Rams look like a team that might be getting even better. Joe, who do you got?
Yeah, I know the Rams definitely dangerous. Got Kupp, you've got, Puka, and just, Stafford definitely looking to be dangerous, especially against his old team. But, that old team is on a mission, like you just said. Bitter taste in their mouth. They want to get over the hump this time. They want to at least get to the big game. And, once you get there, then just destiny sort of decides what destiny decides. But, yeah, I think Detroit is going to be on a mission, and that will give them just a little bit of edge as long as, Coach Campbell just chalk down the aggressiveness just a little bit.
Yeah, you want to be smart in this game, but I think Detroit gets the win as well. I do think that offense is just a little bit better. I think that defense is going to surprise some people this year. They were one of the worst against the pass, but I think they're going to improve. They did go after that in the draft and free agency, so I think they'll be just fine. I'm going to take Detroit. Last up, the Jets open the season on Monday Night Football to see what Aaron Rodgers has.
Haven't we seen this before?
We have. And Leonard Floyd sacked Aaron Rodgers and tore his Achilles 4 plays in. Leonard Floyd now plays for their opponents, the San Francisco 49ers. So aside from the meme of, the league can do the funniest thing if it happens again. It shouldn't happen once, but if it happens twice, like the Jets, you're going to play Brees Hall. You're probably forced into playing Garrett Wilson. End of list. The defenses are both in play here. Aaron Rodgers is a dart throw later. I don't think this is a good week for Brock Purdy. I like him for most games, but this is probably not the best matchup. The Jets defense is elite. But Kittle, Debo, and Ayuk definitely on your lineup. Have a plan for McCaffrey on Monday night. I think he plays. He's a tougher guy than just to sit out week one because of a little bit of a calf strain. I think they're going to play him. They might limit him a little bit, and that's where you get like a Jordan Mason or somebody else that's on your waivers, even if it's a Conklin or something for the Jets. Or I said Allen Lazard might have a bigger week than expected because of the Mike Williams injury. Just have a plan in place. Make sure he's in your flex positions as well in your fantasy lineups. But if he plays, you play him. You do not sit Christian McCaffrey. If he gets hurt 3 plays in, you live with the choice. End of discussion. San Francisco. Well, they were the ones that kept Detroit a half away from the Super Bowl. They got there and lost in overtime to the Chiefs. The Jets, well, it was a lost season after Aaron Rodgers went down and Zach Wilson was their starter for most of the season, not all of it. If Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, the promise of the Jets could be realized. But he's 41. Full season off last year, pretty much. Wasn't great in his last season with Green Bay. His worst career season as a statistical sense, at the very least. For San Francisco, the window's still there, but Kittle's getting older. You got to pay Purdy pretty soon. Really got to focus on those. Pay Purdy pretty soon. Ayuk just got paid. Debo Samuel just redid his contract to free up some cap space. He is probably not going to be around for much longer. Ricky Pearsall just got shot. He's going to be gone for a little bit, but he was the next in line for when one of those two went, whether it was Ayuk, which now seems very unlikely, or Samuel, which after the season seems very possible now. So San Francisco, their window is open, but the window's closing just a little bit at a time. So I think it's kind of this season or next before you really start feeling the pain. So, Joe, who do you got?
Yeah, I know you've got a lot of people wanting to drink the Kool-Aid, picking the Jets to upset San Francisco. The debate, the argument is the Super Bowl hangover. The argument is where's Ayuk's head after all of the negotiation talk, little talk about how rusty is San Francisco. But as rusty as they are, as you have the concerns with CMC, I still think that they are the better team of the two. Now, if it was in New York, I might want to lean a little bit towards the Jets and going, okay, they might be able to do the upset if it was in New York to start off the season. But it ain't in New York, folks. It's in San Fran, and I'm going the Niners.
I'm taking the Niners as well. I would take them if they were on the road in New York, but Aaron Rodgers historically has been very bad against the San Francisco 49ers. They know how to beat him. The Jets, I mean, once you get past Brees Hall and Garrett Wilson, they just don't have the same weapons that San Francisco has once you get past Christian McCaffrey and Debo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk, whichever one you want to call is the one. I personally think both of those wide receivers are better, especially in fantasy, but better than Garrett Wilson. And Christian McCaffrey is one of the very few running backs that's better than Brees Hall. Defenses are very, very comparable. I think the Jets have a slightly better defense, but San Francisco is no slouch as well. And I just can't see the Jets winning this game unless their offense goes crazy. I don't see that happening. My belief is Aaron Rodgers at 41 is probably going to look pretty washed at times, and maybe full season will look washed. If you're an Aaron Rodgers fan or a long-term Packers fan, you want to see him have that one last hurrah chance at the Super Bowl. You're not hoping that happens. And, you know, I don't have anything against Aaron Rodgers, the player. I think he's a weirdo off the field. But I think we can all kind of agree to that.
Darkness retreat.
Retreat. Ayahuasca was almost the vice presidential pick for Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is now out of the race, but it was That was a weird off-season story too. We did
with
not
how
talk about.
politics have gone this year, that would have not been as weird.
I mean, he would have been the least weird of those two. I mean, Aaron Rodgers likes to sit in the dark and smoke a plant that gives him visions. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. cut the head off of a whale and put it on top of his car and drove back to his home with the windows down and whale juice coming in. It's not a political show, but
let's steer back to sports here.
I know, but it's just one of those things. Like, he had a dead bear and dropped it in Central Park and cut off the head of a whale, was excited about it and drove it on top of it. Weird. But he was almost the vice presidential candidate. So, I mean, it's kind of sports related. But anyways, I do think that Aaron Rodgers' career obviously is on the back 9, if not maybe whole 17, 18.
It's going to be a heck of an audio book to listen to.
Yeah. So I just think that the San Francisco 49ers are too good of a team to lose to a team like the Jets. The vibes in that building, not so good from all the reporting as well. So I'm going to take the Niners here. And yeah, that's going to wrap up our picks. Pretty good agreement. You've got Buffalo, Chicago, and Minnesota. I've got Arizona, Tennessee, and the Giants. Those are our disagreements. Everything else we agree on other than Green Bay, Philadelphia, which already resolved itself. Board will be updated next week. It needs to be badly, but next week it will be. So, Joel, let's go to final thoughts, and we'll start with you.
Yeah, my final thought is, here we go. And I was hoping with one of my drafts, I'm glad it was only one. I was like, let me take that Jordan Love. Maybe he'll have a good season. And already, week 1, here we go. The injury, luckily, it's not as bad as everybody first thought. Could be back maybe as soon as a month and a half. And yeah, in one team, it's Jordan Love, and the other quarterback is CJ Stroud. So I'm hoping, I'm going, please just don't let anything happen to Mr. Stroud, because it's the NFL, and that's my final thought.
My final thought is going to be about a sport we don't talk enough about, often enough at least, is college football. And for those who don't know, week 1, last week, it's not usually big games, not usually anything you want to watch because it's major teams playing like Division II teams and whatnot. But this week we got into the meat of the action, and we already have possibly the biggest upset of the season.
Oh, the team that was even bigger than the App State one.
It's, very possible. The Cowboys of college football, Notre Dame, losing 16-14 to Northern Illinois. The Wolfpack pulled the upset over the number 5 rated Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
I don't think they were doing too many bum.
No, roughly 2 if they got 2 touchdowns. But like you see these other teams, Texas pounding Michigan 31-12. That was a top 10 matchup on both sides. Right now,
Michigan needs more sign stealing.
Yeah. And this is the week where, like, if you're a good team, you're going to blow out your opponent. Miami up 39-9 over Florida A&M. Ohio State up 21-0 over Western Michigan, start of the second quarter. Right now, Alabama's only ahead of South Florida by 1, but Alabama's in the red zone, so they may be scoring here soon. But college football, you love to see the crazy upsets. You don't expect one like Northern Illinois over Notre Dame this early in the season, but, Notre Dame, number 5, I think they will drop considerably.
How's Coach Prime doing today?
I need to see. I got to find them. This just shows me the top. Are they in the conference realignment has me confused. Are they in the Mountain West?
Yeah, because they changed this year.
Yeah, they changed again and again, and it's just, where are they at?
Where are they at, and what are they hauling?
Colorado down 14-0 to Nebraska right now in the second quarter.
Ooh, Nelly.
And they're in the Big 12 because UCF is in the Big 12.
Coach Prime ain't going to be happy there.
Yeah, we need to stop with this conference realignment crap too, because UCF is in Orlando, Florida. They're in the Big 12. Colorado is out in Boulder, Colorado by Denver. That's the same conference. In the Big 10, you've got Oregon and UCLA. You also have teams like Rutgers and Maryland, so it's a literal coast to coast thing. Like, can we stop? Like, I get it. The regions can be massaged, but can we stop? Like,
The reasons are show me the money.
I understand.
Mm.
I get it. I don't like it, but I do get it. But yeah, first big college football upset of the season has occurred, and of course, it's Notre Dame just letting everybody down, just like the Cowboys. They are the Cowboys of college football, and with that, that'll be my final thought. But good to have football back for sure. Anyways, that is our time. We'll try and tighten this up a little bit as we go forward because an hour and 15 minutes is longer than we want.
Us tighten it up.
Well, we don't normally have a major quarterback injury and
Yeah,
2 games to recap, plus a full slate of games to cover. So it got away from us a little bit. We'll tighten it up. With that, I am Flying Ryan Gilchrist along with
Tampa Motormouth Joel Verl.
And we'll be back next week, recap all these games, preview Thursday night Dolphins-Bills game, and hopefully have good weeks for fantasy and for picks. Set your lineups. Remember, McCaffrey, have a plan. And with that,
Jamar Chase might not play
Jamar
tomorrow.
Chase. I mean, Jamar Chase is a 1:00 game. You should have plenty of options. But again, when you know these guys have the possibility of missing, have a plan, especially when it's that Monday night, Sunday night type of game. With that, we go.